this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures, and today I'm back with day 11 of my 2020 holiday card series. Today I have an inside shadow box card to share with you featuring Mama Elephant stamps, and this is actually one of our Challenge a Crafty Friend cards, and this time the theme was inside shadow box, and the theme was for that was deck the halls. So I used the adorable Fuzzy Hugs stamp set and also the A Beary Christmas by Mama Elephant for the two scenes for my inside shadow box. I stamped all of my images onto Neenah Solo White cardstock, and the bears I'm coloring with E50 markers. I started out by using E55 as my darkest shade. Now I'm blending that out with E53, just pulling the color out a little bit further. Now the E55 and the E53 are quite different in tone, so they're a little bit difficult to blend sometimes. But I really like the overall color of the E50, so I keep trying. Especially on like larger images, you often can tell. So it took me a little bit of time to blend the colors, but I really like the color, so it was worth it. Blending that out with E51, and I made sure to lay the shadow of the bear that's behind the first one on the left side, because the face would be in shade behind her. Just blending the edge of the E53 with the E51. Then I realized that I forgot to color his paw. Just going back in with E55 and then E53. Now again with E51, and now blending everything together with E50. And I'm only coloring the one set of bears on camera. I used the exact same shades on the other ones. And on the little bear baby, I used the E53, E51, and E50. I didn't use the E55 on them, or on him or her, just to make him a bit lighter. Again, going in with a little bit more of the E50, just for some added shade. Just deepening up the shadows a little bit. I like to go in with 2 layers, as if you've been watching me for a while, you know, because it just adds a little bit more depth, and also the colors blend nicer. At least I find. Just adding more shadow with the E53, and blending out with E51 again. Going over all the transitions. And then blending everything together with E50. Now for the birds, I'm using YR23 as my darkest shade. Just adding in a little bit of shadow, I didn't want too much there. Then going in with Y21. Blending out those edges with Y11. Making sure to leave the face part of the birds white, because I wanted those to be really light. And I'm going in with Y00, and as my lightest shade, the Y000. I just used the YR23 and the Y21 on the beaks, and also going in with Y15 just to give it a bit more yellow. Adding a little bit more of the Y11 then the white 000, just to blend it together. And then I already used the YR23 on the star, now going in with Y11, Y00, and Y000. And I'm also bringing in the Y28 and the YR23 again, just to give it more of a gold sheen. Adding in the Y15 to pull it more yellow gold. And then blending everything together with Y11. And I used the same color on the stars on the trees as well. For my tree, I'm using G20 markers as my darkest shade. I'm using G24. Just adding little flicks and basically adding little flicks to draw in layers of branches so that the tree gets a little bit more definition. Then blending that out with G21. Just going over those with more flicks. Then, as my highlight shade, I'm using G20. And that's when I realized that I wanted the tree to be a bit darker. But the next color after the G24 that I own is G28, and that was a bit much. So I just used the tip-to-tip technique from G24 to G28, just to add a bit more shading there, so that it's still fairly light, but not as light as it was before. Again, adding lots of flicks. Then going over those again with the G24 just on its own. Pulling the flicks down further. And going over it again with the G21. And going over the edges again with my lightest shade, the G20. And then for the greens on the accessories of my bears, I'm also using the same shades of markers. As my darkest shade this time, I wanted it to be a bit darker, so I'm using the G28. Initially, I wanted to alternate the colors between green and the reddish purple. But then I messed up and colored 2 in a row, so I just had to go with the entire jacket in green. Just laying down the G28, blending that out with G24. Now I'm going back in with G21, and I'm sorry that the caps were off camera there, but as you can see, I realized that. And then I'm just blending it out with G20. I colored the other scarf of the bear in the same color, and now I'm just using RV69, RV66, and RV63 on the remaining accessories. Again, I use the same shades on the hat and also on the ornaments on the tree. And now I'm just bringing in a bit of E57 and E55 for the, or E59, just to give it more depth, then E57 and then E55 for the trunk of the Christmas tree. And a little bit of C00 on the little pom-poms on the hat and on the scarf. Now for my inside shadow box pieces, I cut down 2 panels. One measures 8 by 5.5 inches, scored at 4¼ inches. And the second panel is 8.5 by 5.5 inches, scored 3 times at 1/2 inch, 4¼ inches, and 4¾ inches. I cut down a slither of the 1/2 inch flap just to make sure it fits inside the card nicely. And I use the pink cardstock, or the light pink cardstock, because I always find that it's easier with those kinds of interactive cards when you ink blend right on the cardstock you're using, because you don't add more bulk by adding in additional panels of cardstock. That also works, they still work fine, but this is just a little more slim. So I'm just using spun sugar, worn lipstick, seedless preserves, and a little bit of black soot on my panels. And I'm just ink blending all of the colors to create more of a pinkish night sky, or more like a dusk sky. Just adding quite a lot of the seedless preserves, and it really does help that the cardstock is already like a light pink. It's the Peony cardstock by Hero Arts, and I really love that it's like a beautiful pink that's not too like bright. I really like that. So now I'm bringing in the black soot as well. Adding in a lot more darkness up top. And now I'm going over that with seedless preserves to make it look not black, but like a deep purple color. Again, going over the edges to make sure it's all blended nicely, pulling the color a little bit further down because I realized that my hill wouldn't go up that far. I ink blended the card front in the exact same way, and I also die cut the Mama Elephant Skybursters cover die. And here I'm just using the white oval that's left over, and I'm just using that as a hill so I can just use all the pieces that I've colored. And I'm just using a paper towel to cover the non-ink blended panels, and I'm just adding some shimmer spritz, white splatters, and also some liquid Stardust, just to add lots of shimmer and shine on the panels. And I just set those off to dry because when you assemble the card, you want to make sure that those splatters are really dry. I die cut a little branch from the Display a Card die set from Mama Elephant, and I'm just using a little bit of tea dye Distress Oxide ink to add a tiny bit of shading on it. I used the white wood grain cardstock from Lawn Fawn for it. And now I'm already stamping my sentiment just so that I don't forget. I used the same light pink cardstock, and I'm stamping the Warm Holiday Hugs from the Fuzzy Hug stamp set on it. And I just used the simple sentiment strips, I think they're called. I'm not sure. From Lawn Fawn there are anyways. And I just stamped the sentiment in the Seedless Preserves Oxide. And now it's time to add all of my images. I always find it's easiest to add them while the card isn't assembled yet, but you can do it either way, just however you prefer. Just adding the little birdies just to have something up top over my little scene, because I just thought that it would be so adorable. You have on the front, you have the couple that's, you know, hugging each other, so happy, and then on the second scene, they have a little baby and they're decorating the tree for Christmas, and I just think that's so cute. You can just imagine that maybe, I don't know, it's like a year later and suddenly they're with their little one decorating the tree, and things like that just make me happy. Now I'm also adding the little Papa Bear. Adding everything down using liquid glue just to not add a lot of bulk there. And now it's time to assemble my card. I added score tape to the thin flap and also to the back piece of the other side. I'm just lining it up and pressing it into the adhesive of the thin 1/2 inch flap. Just pressing it down, and then I'm just flipping the card over, removing the backing paper on the other side. And then I'm just folding the card shut, making sure it's nicely lined up, and pressing the adhesive down. I just used another piece of cardstock because I didn't want fingerprints because it was just ink blending on my cardstock. And that already creates my inside shadow box. I also already added off camera the Skyburs cover and also the little hill that I just cut in half from the inside circle. And now I'm just using foam squares to adhere the bears and the sentiment banner. And now I'm just adding a little bit of embellishment. I used the Nuvo Aqua Shimmer Pen in glitter gloss just on the hat and also on the pom-poms of the scarf, the Christmas tree ornaments. Now normally for this kind of a card I like to embellish before I adhere my images, but I just forgot, so it still works fine if you do it like this. You just have to make sure that you add your embellishments and then just leave the card standing somewhere open until it's completely dry, or you'll just totally mess up your card. And now I'm just using the Nuvo Crystal Glaze on the round ornaments, just adding a drop of that on all of them just to give them some shine and dimension. And on the stars, I'm using the Stardust Stickles again, just to give them even more oomph. I let those dry, and after everything was completely dry, I went in and added some of the iridescent stars. These are by Little Things by Lucy, and I love them because they have 3 different sizes, so it's nice to, mix it up. And I also added those on the inside. I did film this, but you could barely see it because the flap of the card kept closing shut. But I did just go ahead and do the exact same thing on the inside. And that finishes off my card for today. I really hope you like it. I had a lot of fun making this. I do love those inside shadow boxes. And I think it's just such a cute scene with the bears on the front, and then suddenly there's a little baby decorating their first Christmas tree. And I just think it's so adorable with the little birdies watching. I will link to Lien's video down below because I'm sure her inside shadow box will be absolutely amazing as usual. I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season so far and that you're enjoying my little holiday card series. I'm trying to make the best of this kind of a season because even though it's very different than any other year around here, we're still trying to, get into the holiday spirit. So I will be back tomorrow with my next card. Have a wonderful day. Bye!